Alrighty, guys, a soldier's perspective. This is where you should stop reading the document. Okay, so from the beginning of the document to a soldier's perspective contains all of the information you need for a historical background of what took place in this place that we call the United States of America. If you noticed in video 1, 2, and 3, I did not put a link to the document. The reason why is because I feared that if I put the link, people would go read the document, and in reading the document, they would become confused and led astray, because from a soldier's perspective on down, the document does not contain any historical evidence or proofs or facts. What it contains is what Russell J. Gohl thinks that he has accomplished. Now, understand there's two people that consider themselves to be a Postmaster General, and that is Russell J. Gohl, which you see in this document, and then there's another guy who goes by the name Keith Livingway. Now, Keith Livingway I dealt with many years back. In fact, I still have my entire folder, all of my documents that took me completely and utterly out of the system, claim my own vessel, and all that kind of stuff, okay? But what you'll find out as you do your research, now this is my opinion, okay, and I could be wrong, I could be in error. But in my opinion, both Keith Livingway as well as Russell J. Gohl are both in error, okay? Both of them are in error. That's my opinion, guys, but that's personally my opinion. Like I said, I could be wrong, they may be right, they may be correct, but I just don't see how they would be correct. What's important is to understand all the events that came to the point and to the day of November 2nd, 1999, when the third and final bankruptcy of the United States of America, Inc., the incorporation, came to its end. That's the critical thing to understand. It's everything that took place from the creation of the United States of America to November 2nd, 1999. In which you had a presidential election take place. That's the key thing. All the information contained all the way down to a soldier's perspective is absolutely critically important if you want to understand the historical background of this place that we call the United States of America. And what you discover in all of this is that, and this is all, anybody, that means you or anybody else that comes along can go and research this out and find for yourself the actual, genuine, factual, and evidences, including documents and everything else, such as the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Act of 1871, and on it goes. Matter of fact, let's take a look at something. This is the Act of 1871. This is where Congress, without authority, created a federal corporation called the United States of America. Let's see right here. For expense under the Neutrality Act, $20,000 for expenses incurred under instructions of the Secretary of State of bringing home from a foreign country persons charged with crimes and expenses incident thereto, including loss by exchange, $5,000. And then you keep on going down this thing until eventually you get down here. To pay to the government of Great Britain and Ireland the second and last installment of the amount awarded by the commissioners under the Treaty of July 1, 1863, in satisfaction of the claims of the Hudson Bay and of the Puget Sound Agricultural Company, $325,000 in gold coin. Okay, in this time and in this period, you're still dealing with gold. Then you continue down and you get to right here, and this is where it becomes important. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that all that part of the territory of the United States included within the limits of the District of Columbia be, and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name it is hereby constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes, and may contract and be contracted with, sue and be sued, plead and be impleaded, have a seal, and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation, not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States. Notice the United States and the capitalization. Against syntax, pronunciation is very important. It's what allows you to see how the feudal system operates. And the provisions of this act. And be it further enacted that the executive power and authority in and over the said District of Columbia shall be vested in a governor, who shall be appointed by the President by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, and who shall hold his office for 4 years, and until his successor shall be appointed and qualified. And then you can continue to read on down the document. Let's furthermore prove that we're dealing with a corporation when we are dealing with the United States of America. Let's go over to the actual U.S. Code, and let's look and let's see exactly how or what the U.S. Code says concerning this corporation. Okay, so here we are on Cornell Law School, the Legal Information Institute, and we're looking at the U.S. Code. And here we are on U.S. Code Title 28, Judiciary and Judicial Procedure, Part 6, Particular Proceedings, Chapter 176, Federal Debt Collection Procedure, Subchapter A, Definitions and General Provisions, Section 3002, which is the definitions. And so what we find out is Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, or any territory or possession of the United States. So 15, United States, the word United States, capital U, lowercase N-I-T-E-D, capital S, lowercase S-T-A-T-E-S, means a federal corporation. So what you're dealing with today is not the same as the original republic that existed prior to the takeover by the British Crown. Okay, this is very, very important for you to understand. Then you have Part B, an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States, or, again, United States, same syntax. Or C, an instrumentality of the United States. Again, same syntax, still speaking of the corporation. So the corporation, any instrumentality, any commission, board, or entity, all are part of the corporation. Then, if we go down to 16, it says the United States Marshal means a United States Marshal. Notice the syntax. A deputy marshal or an official of the United States Marshal's Service designated under Section 564. And then you can go down to the added publication and through all that stuff as well. But understand the syntax here and understand the United States Marshals also apply to the United States Corporation or Federal Corporation. Okay, so what is the importance of a United States Marshal? The United States Marshals are the ones that prevent piracy and theft and other interferences as part of its function, okay? And it works for the Universal Postal Union, okay? All of this always will go back to the post office, okay? Understand, guys, that in a republic, there are, quote, offices on the land. In a corporation, there are corporate offices on the land. And what you're dealing with today are corporate offices, and there is nobody, as far as I know. Now, like I said, Keith Livingway and Russell J. Gold both claim to be Postmaster General, but a Postmaster General, by its very definition, is outside of the United States. Okay, you have a postmaster in the United States, on the land, in the office. Okay, completely, utterly different than a Postmaster General. And if you really want to get confused about everything, there is actually two different types of postmaster, really is what it is. So really you have an office of the post space master, and then there's also the office of the postmaster, one word, okay? So there's all that, and then there's the Postmaster General, which is what they are claiming to have captured. Okay. Now, did they capture it all? Well, I don't know. Like I said, in my opinion, they are in error. I could be wrong, and they may have actually genuinely captured that that vessel? I don't know. Like I said, I do not know. From all the research I've done over the last 16 years, I cannot come to a conclusion on that. Now, if there is a Postmaster General out there, please stand up, speak up, say something. Because as far as I can tell, as far as the actual office of Postmaster, which is on the land in the Republic, it has been vacant since the Civil War. When you do your research on this, it was Benjamin Franklin himself that occupied the office of Post Space Master, okay, office on the land. It was Benjamin Franklin, and he passed it on to his relatives. But since the Civil War, it appears, now, like I said, I could be in error in this particular spot here, but from the Civil War on, it appears that that office, the office of Post Space Master, which is the office on the land in the Republic, has been vacant. Okay, that's how it appears to me. And so they've done these other things, and they've gone through this incorporated system in order to keep mail moving. And that means all commerce. That means, like, if you want to go from state to state in the United States, in other words, you go from the state of California to the state of Nevada. Basically, what you're doing is packaging yourself up and then mailing yourself to the next state. It's still commerce because you're moving from state to state, or nation state to nation state. Remember, the United States of America, the Republic, is a united states. It's all of the nation states, which are themselves their own nations, all united under God and under a rule of law and a republic form of government, in which the people are the sovereigns, the kings and priests of the land, and the republic works for the sovereigns. So I just want to make all of that clear so you understand the post office position. The post office position is by far the most critical position of all the positions. Okay, I know people think it's the commander-in-chief and all this thing, but look, without the post office, you do not have communications, especially when you go back prior to computers, prior to cell phones, prior to phones in general, including the dial phones where you had to literally take your finger, stick it in there, and use the rotary and ring it around to whatever number you chose to dial a number and all that kind of stuff. Okay, prior to all that, there was no communications, no commerce except in and through the post office. And so that position, office of Post Space Master, which is an office on the land in the Republic, is critically important. But again, we had a republic, and what happened is we found ourselves in trouble, and then here comes the British Crown. We strike a deal with the British Crown, and an entity called the United States Incorporated then takes over this entire process. And then this incorporation goes through three different bankruptcies, and then at the third and final bankruptcy had to vacate the office. Okay, this is what you needed to pick up and you needed to understand in that document or in that report. The rest of that document, the rest of that report is absolutely worthless. Okay, now I have gone back since then, and I have put the link in all of the videos to that document. If you really want to go and read that document, then guys, go ahead. But I'm telling you, it is a waste of your time. It only matters up until the soldier part, okay, because it's giving you a historical background, facts of the past. Now what we're going to do from right now is we're going to go in here and we're going to look at some other facts that are not presented in that document but are also very important. Now, early in the morning on October 12th, 1492, a sailor looked out to the horizon from the bow of a sailing ship, the Pinta, P-I-N-T-A, and saw land. After 10 long weeks at sea from the port of Palos, P-A-L-O-S, Spain, Columbus and his crew saw the New World. The following day, 90 crew members from Columbia's 3-ship fleet set foot on the island of Guanania in the Bahamas and planted the flag of their sponsors, which was the King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. The first Columbus Day celebration in the United States took place October the 12th, 1792, 300 years after his discovery, but was still not an official holiday for yet another 100 years. But 1492, Columbus had officially discovered this place we call the United States, or the New World. Now, there have been, guys, and you need to understand this, there have been people that prior to Columbus that did discover the New World, okay? It's not critically important as far as the history of the United States is concerned, but do understand that Columbus is not the first person to ever discover the New World. Columbus is important because it is through Columbus that the United States began the process of forming. So, 1492, Columbus discovers the New World, or the United States of America. Now, I'm going to cover a couple things here that are facts, but aren't critically important, but that you need to know and should know, and your children should know, and you should, and each generation thereafter should know, because it's lost in history, and it's very difficult to find these things. And so this is kind of like an historical record that I'm leaving in video format. Okay, so some of the stuff that I'm going to say here, that I'm going to cover real quickly, is not critically important, but it is historical and needs to be remembered because it may become important in future generations and needs to be continued to pass down. It's things that have basically been forgotten, but are important in some ways. And everything that I'm going to go over in this today is going to lead to the possibility of Q. Okay, now, understand, guys, that the Freemasonry, okay, I know I keep bringing up the Freemasonry, but the Freemasonry are a very big part of what's going on the earth today. They're not the top, okay, by far. Above Freemasonry is this, or connected with Freemasonry is this Illuminati, and above Illuminati is all these other things. Then you get to the Council of 13, and above the Council of 13, you have the black nobility, who are the real controllers of the earth. The black nobility. If you really want to do some serious and deep research, get into black nobility and you'll find out exactly who controls this earth. But as far as your beast system and all that kind of stuff that people are looking for, scripturally speaking, that has to do with this triangle, the city of London, the Washington, D.C., or the Pentagon, basically, and then the Vatican, okay, and that's your beast system. But there's people that control that beast system. There are families, and they are considered to be the black nobility. And those are the ones that control these systems. That is why the scriptures were able to tell you each of the things that would come to pass in this chain of events, in this dream that Daniel had, or not Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar had in the book of Daniel, that gives you a statue, which is one solid statue, okay? It's not two separate statues, it's one solid statue, meaning that there's going to be these empires that are going to come one after the other, building off of and implementing the things of the empire prior to it, until you get down to the feet of the statue, which is where we are today, under this trinity, this triangle of the city of London and Vatican and Washington, D.C. And it is in the time of that last and final empire, the feet down there, that is both clay and iron mixed together and cannot stick together or stay together for long. It is during that time that this kingdom comes down from, this rock comes down from heaven and smotes the entire statue and breaks it into a million pieces, and then an eternal righteous kingdom is set up on the earth. But it's during the time of the feet kingdom, which is the triangle or the trinity that I've been going over and over again. So we're going to step away from that for a minute, and we're going to get some background history here. Now, I've already gone over Columbus, but I'm going to give you some other things that most people are absolutely unaware of, and in some regards have nothing to do with nothing, but are historically important, so that you can understand how each thing became what it is. But other things that I'm going to talk about as we go through this are very important and lead possibly to Q. Okay, so we went over Columbus arriving in 1492, which is right about in here. Then in the 1500s is the first time that the word America is used. And then we get into about 1520, and Magellan circles the globe, or circles the earth. And then about 1534, Jacques Cartier sailed up the St. Lawrence River June 9th, 1534. When French navigator Jacques Cartier left France by boat in April 1534, the king ordered him to find gold, spices, which were valuable at the time, and water passage from France to Asia. 2 months later, on June 6, Cartier sailed into the waters of the St. Lawrence River in eastern Canada. Although he couldn't travel up the river all the way to Asia, Cartier had in fact discovered an important waterway into the vast areas of Canada. And here you got a picture of Grande Hermine, I guess is how you would say it, the most celebrated of French ships of the galleon type. Continuing, sailing with 61 men aboard his ship, Cartier ventured north up to St. Lawrence River to Prince Edward Island, where he made his first contact with members of the native Iroquois nation. I'm not sure how you say that word there. The first interactions were friendly. The tribe's chief, Donnacona, let two of his sons, Tegnoagni, I don't know how to say these names either, and Domagaya, returned to France with Cartier on the condition that they would return home. Let's go back real quick. Ships on the St. Lawrence River at River du Loup. And then Jacques Cartier sailed up the St. Lawrence River June 9th, 1534. 2 years later, Cartier returned from France, bringing Tegnoagni and Domagaya with him, north of Montreal. His ship arrived at the Lachine Rapids, which were so big that he and his crew could not pass through. Cartier realized he could sail no further. Cartier's voyages to eastern Canada helped other explorers who would establish French-speaking Canada. Now, interesting here is that both Montreal and Quebec, still to this day, their main language is French. The impassable Lachine Rapids on the St. Lawrence River. Very big rapids. So that was in 1534. Moving to 1565, a Spanish expedition established St. Augustine in Florida. Very interesting. Everybody always asks about these star forts and where they came from. Well, we'll find out here for those of you that are interested in knowing that. So this is a view of St. Augustine, East Florida, 1855. A Spanish expedition established St. Augustine in Florida, September 8th, 1565. Menendez de Aviles named San Augustine for St. Augustine, Bishop and Hippo, Algeria, upon whose feast day he had sighted the coast. The city was to serve important functions for the Spanish Empire, defending the primary trade route to Europe along the Atlantic Ocean's main west to east current, called the Gulf Stream. As the territorial capital, St. Augustine would also defend the Spanish claimed land against invasion. In 1672, the Queen ordered a stronger fort to be built to replace the wooden fort, which had proved vulnerable to pirate attack. This new one, made of shell stone, consisting of walls 30 foot high and 12 feet thick and surrounded by a moat, was made to last, and last it did. St. Augustine was ruled by the Spanish. Okay, we're talking about Florida down there. St. Augustine was ruled by the Spanish for 256 years and the British for 20. The United States acquired the old Castillo in 1821, so this is still prior to the incorporation, or the British Crown creating this corporation that acts like government. Okay, so 1821, and renamed it Fort Marion in 1825. The fort has had a colorful history. It was plundered by sea raiders. Sir Francis Drake provided a refuge for loyalists to the British King during the American Revolution, was used as a prison during the Indian Wars, and was a battle site in the American Civil War. Recognizing the amazing history of the grim, massive fort, once a symbol of Spanish power, and the oldest standing fort in the continental United States, the U.S. government made it a national park in 1933. 1933, that's an important date concerning banking and the Federal Reserve. Its original name was restored in 1942. Today, the city of St. Augustine, Florida, and the Castillo de San Marcos provide a glimpse at the panorama of 450 years of exploration, settlement, and war in North America. Now, I did skip page 1, so let's back up to page 1 real quickly. So here was page 1 of that, and it said, did you know that the oldest continually occupied city in the United States is in the state of Florida? On September 8, 1565, Pedro Menendez de Avila landed on the shore of what is now called Matanzas Bay, and began the founding of the Presidio of San Augustine. Later, the settlement would be called St. Augustine, Florida, built on the site of an ancient Native American village and near the place where Ponce de Leon, the European discoverer of Florida, landed in 1513. So remember, it was Ponce de Leon that discovered Florida originally, and that was back in 1513. And he was in search of the legendary Fountain of Youth. And it has been continually inhabited since its founding. So this is the oldest known location, and we're going to take a look at it real quickly. But just so you see the name here, the Castillo de San Marcos. Okay, we're going to go and check this out. Okay, so we're over here on Google Earth. We'll go ahead and paste in that name, Castillo de San Marcos. We'll search for it, and then it'll take us right to it down there in Florida. And you'll see that this is one of the star forts. And I mean, there's star forts all over the earth, guys. But these were during the days of the Spaniards when they were reigning and ruling. Here's the fort itself. The walls are, I believe, if I may be wrong, but I believe it was 18 foot or something like that, 18 to 20 foot tall. But it's one of the star forts. You got the outer star, and then you got, of course, the inner star castle or the fort. All right, let's get back to the history. Okay, so that was 1565, and then around 1590, you had the English Navy defeats the Armada, and then you go into the 1600s where the Jamestown was founded. Jamestown was established May 14th, 1607. The Virginia Company of England made a daring proposition: sail to the new mysterious land which they called Virginia in honor of Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, and begin a settlement. They established Jamestown, Virginia on May 14, 1607, the first permanent British settlement in North America, though determined, the settlers did not know what severe challenges they would face. Here you got this 1639 church tower was one of the few remnants of the Jamestown settlement, visible in the 1890s when the picture was taken. Page 2 of this, half of the Jamestown settlers were artisans, craftsmen, soldiers, and laborers, including a tailor, a barber, and 2 surgeons among them. The other half were gentlemen, and a gentleman is men of wealth who did not have a profession and who may have underestimated the rough work necessary to survive in the New World. After 8 months, only 60 of the 214 pioneers were still alive. Among the survivors was Captain John Smith, adventurer and explorer. Despite the hardships, he kept the colony going with his solid leadership. Those first 2 years, as Jamestown grew to 500 with new arrivals from England. After he left in 1609, however, more trouble came. And here's a map that was created by Captain John Smith, showing the new settlement of Jamestown, Virginia. So more trouble came. Page 3, weather conditions were rough and supplies were low. Only 60 of the 500 colonists survived the harsh winter that followed Smith's departure. Only 60 out of the 500, guys. Jamestown, though it possessed a good harbor, was swampy, infested with mosquitoes, and lacked fresh water sources. The people fought against disease, famine, and the Algonquian Indians, whose land the British settlers now claimed. Again, these British people, the British Crown was going out conquering every place and territory that they possibly could. The Algonquian chief, Powhatan, I don't know how you say it, at first allowed the visitors to settle, build, and farm in his territory, but as more and more came, he grew tired of the colonists' expansion on his land. Some of the tribe attacked settlers working in the fields, and we'll go to page 4. here in a second, but check this out. This charter for the Virginia Company of London, written in 1606, allowed the company to send people to North America, start the colony of Jamestown. Now, understand that even prior to the creation of the Republic, the actual true Republic, you had Great Britain over here coming in, seizing land, expanding on land that didn't belong to him. Again, doing what he's always done, being a tyrant. Going to page 4. And here we have a 23-year-old Virginia Algonquian man wearing a necklace and head ornaments and with facial markings in 1645. That's the picture there. But there were some years of peace and prosperity. Peace came when Pocahontas, you guys heard of Pocahontas, and even Trump himself has spoke of Pocahontas, on TV here lately. Daughter of Chief Powhatan, married John Rolfe, a tobacco farmer in Jamestown. Also, new supplies and leadership eventually arrived from England. An event of momentous consequence took place in 1619, when a Dutch slave trader exchanged a cargo of captive Africans for food. The Africans became indentured servants, trading labor for shelter and eventual freedom. So they came in with the African captives or slaves, and the Africans became indentured servants, trading labor for shelter, and eventually they would become free as time passed by. They were among the first African American in the colonies. Racial slavery would not become a common occurrence until 1680. Now remember, this is 1607. For all the struggle for the land and survival continued, but Jamestown was just the beginning. Alright, a year later, 1608, John Smith became a leader of Jamestown. September 10th, 1608. Did the Indian princess Pocahontas really save his life? Was he really captured and sold into slavery in Turkey, escaping with the love of a Turkish woman? John Smith may have been the first romantic of America. He certainly became an appreciated leader, explorer, adventurer, writer, and cartographer. Smith assumed a leadership role at the Jamestown settlement on September 10th, 1608. On the Atlantic coast of present-day Virginia, Jamestown was the first British settlement in North America, founded in 1607. So here's your first actual genuine British settlement, and it comes into this land that we call America in 1607. At first, Smith wasn't even considered for the government. And here you have a fresco. It says a fresco of Captain Smith and Pocahontas right here. The charismatic and controversial Smith was originally excluded from the government of the settlement on the grounds that he had conspired to mutiny during the voyage to Virginia. But because of his strength and ingenuity, the people of Jamestown needed him. He began to run things long before he officially received his post, leading the settlers through struggles against disease, starvation, and frequent raids upon the settlement by the Native American tribes. A brash figure with a bold self-confidence, Smith brought his soldiering experience to Virginia. And here's a picture of Pocahontas in a European garb. Third page, we see here that with his writings, his stories, and the John Smith Memorial in Richmond, Virginia, Smith is still honored and remembered. Smith claimed that while fighting in Transylvania, Hungary, against the Turks in 1600, he had been wounded, captured, and sold into slavery in Turkey. Smith said that a Turkish woman had fallen in love with him and helped him escape. Whether that is a tall tale or not, his most famous Jamestown experience, equally as romantic and daring, has become a legendary story in American history. Captured and brought before Algonquian Chief Powhatan in December 1607, Pocahontas, the chief's young daughter, supposedly saved Smith's life by throwing herself between him and his would-be executioners. In the summer of 1608, Jamestown prospered. Smith was injured in a gunpowder accident in 1609 and was forced to return to England. Returning in 1614, he dubbed the region to the north of Virginia New England. And so this is where you get your New England terminology from, is right here. Do you think Smith's stories are true? You might want to read more of Captain Smith's adventures in his book. And he's got a book here that you guys can go and check out. 1 year later, we have a picture here. A replica of Half Moon entering the Hudson River. That's the ship right there. And you notice the flags. Flags are important. It's Admiralty law. Henry Hudson, and his crew sailed into the river that would bear his name, September 3rd, 1609. How did the Hudson River in New York and New Jersey get its name? On the misty morning of September 3rd, 1609, explorer Henry Hudson and his crew aboard the Half Moon sailed into the majestic river off the Atlantic coast by chance. Strong headwinds and storms forced them to abandon the northeast voyage they had been assigned. Rather than return to Holland with nothing to report, the crew voted to look for the Northwest Passage, a legendary waterway that would carry a ship all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. They passed by the island we know today as Manhattan and sailed up the river. Here we have a map of the Hudson River in 1848, and it says Hudson was not the first European explorer to discover this river. The Florentine navigator Giovanni da Verrazzano discovered the Hudson in 1524, but Henry Hudson traveled the river much farther than its previous explorer. After 150 miles, the Half Moon did not reach the Pacific, but it did reach what would later become Albany, New York. There, they turned around, but as a result of Hudson's exploration, the river bears his name today. And this is how you got the Hudson River up there. Hudson was a headstrong but courageous commander. Though he often mismanaged his crews by playing favorites or letting morale suffer, he was a competent navigator. He undertook 4 dangerous voyages and made huge contributions to the geographical knowledge. His exploration of the Hudson River led to Dutch colonization of the area. And then on the 3rd page, we're looking out over the Hudson River. The Hudson River, once known to the Mohican Indians as Mohicanuk, great waters constantly in motion is what that means, was the site of key battles in the American Revolution. It also inspired an important phase of landscape painting called the Hudson River School that celebrated the natural beauty of the American landscape. Today, the Hudson is one of the nation's most important waterways. Ocean-going ships can navigate the river to Albany year-round. Pleasure boats and tugboats and barge traffic can reach the Great Lakes from May to November. Cargo such as wood pulp, steel, cocoa beans, grain, the scrap metal rely on the Hudson for deliveries. The U.S. Military Academy at West Point overlooks the Hudson River too. And then that's it on that one. Now we're going to go to another one here. All right, now William Penn was born October 14th, 1644. We're getting ever closer to July 4th, 1776, when the Declaration of Independence happened. And then 1871, where the corporation happened. But we're not going to go all the way there, guys. That's not the point here. William Penn was born October 14th, 1644. How did Pennsylvania get its name? Its founder, English reformer William Penn, born on October 14th, 1644, in London, England, named it in honor of his father. So here is William Penn, mover and Quaker at 22 years old. Okay, Quaker. Now, persecuted in England for his Quaker faith, Penn came to America in 1682 and established Pennsylvania as a place where people could enjoy freedom of religion. And as I've said in several of my videos now, guys, is that the founding fathers believed in freedom of religion, that everyone should be able to practice their religion no matter what that religion is. Okay? No matter what it is. If it's Judaism, then Judaism. If it's Muslim, then Muslim. It doesn't matter. You should have the right to practice it. And if you do not have that right, that freedom, then you can never ever work out your salvation. It's not possible. Okay? That was the whole experiment of the New World, was to see if we could get a nation and a people together in this world under this Luciferian cabal, this earthwide Luciferian cabal that was controlling everything, get our own people, our own place, our own nation in which religious freedom was available for anyone and everyone. The colony became a haven for minority religious sects from Germany, Holland, Scandinavia, and Great Britain. Penn obtained the land from King Charles II as payment for a debt owed to his deceased father. Here's Penn's cottage in Fairmount Park, Philadelphia. He was born the privileged son of a land-owning gentleman. So remember, the gentlemen were the rich and the wealthy. Young William Penn was greatly affected by the preaching of Quaker minister Thomas Lowe, Quaker. Expelled from Oxford University in England in 1662 for refusing to conform to the Anglican Church, Penn joined the Quakers. He was locked up in the Tower of London for 4 times for stating his beliefs in public and in print. After his father died in 1670, Penn inherited the family estates and began to frequent the court of King Charles II, campaigning for religious freedom. For religious freedom. Okay, it's what it's all about. This is what the entire New World, the whole point of the Constitution, the organic Constitution, was to make a covenant with the Creator, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all, and not only that, but the Bill of Rights to establish our rights, that nobody could infiltrate those rights, that those were God-given, unalienable rights, and so forth and so on. Seeing no prospects for religious tolerance or political reform in England, Penn looked to America, which he had visited briefly in 1677. In a 1682 document, Penn guaranteed absolute freedom of worship in Pennsylvania. Rich in fertile lands as well as religious freedom, the colony attracted settlers and grew rapidly. Penn is also remembered for peaceful interaction with the Lenape Indians and his draft of the Plan of Union, which precedes the Constitution. The Plan of Union, a forerunner of the U.S. Constitution. Thanks to William Penn, Pennsylvania, which guaranteed religious freedom for its citizens, was established in the New World. And this Plan of Union is the forerunner of the United States Constitution, and it's all based upon religious freedom. If you will go and read the documents of the peoples whose names I've given you so far, if you'll go read what they themselves have to say, they consider themselves the new Israel. And we haven't even got to 1776, July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence, the United States of America when it was created. We haven't even got to it yet, but this is what is leading up to the creation of the United States of America. I'm going to stop here and we're going to shift over and we're going to find out what happened. We had the Puritans, the Jews, and the Quakers. What are these Quakers? So we go over to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia likes to kind of hide things that are very important. So here it is. This is the Quakers, okay? From Wikipedia, the Free Encyclopedia, Quakers, also called Friends, are a historically Christian group of religious movements formerly known as the Religious Society of Friends, okay? The Religious Society of Friends. Look over here at the church here, the Religious Society of Friends or Friends Church. This is one of their symbols. Now, are a historically Christian group, Religious Society of Friends, or Friends Church. Okay, those are the 3 names that they go by. Members of the various Quaker movements are all generally united in a belief in the ability of each human being to experientially access the light within, or that of God in everyone. Some may profess the priesthood of all believers, a doctrine derived from the first epistle of Peter. And you can continue to read this. I'll put the link to this. But these people believe that each and every single human being on the earth had the light of God within them, just exactly as I showed you in the Father-Son video. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. The Word was in the beginning with God. The same was God. And you go all the way down, and it talks about the light of men. Each and every human being, each and every one. These were the absolute, true, genuine Christians, the Quakers. They believed in religious freedom. You could have any religion you wanted. You had the right to that, and it is the only possible way that you're ever going to be able to work out your salvation. And like I said, guys, you can come and read all of this. But as I also said, they like to, Wikipedia likes to kind of hide things. So we got to study this out real quick. I'm not going to stop and show you any of this, guys. You guys can do it. But here you go. There's William Penn, absolutely involved in it. So here we are, the Society of Friends. We just learned over on Wikipedia that the Society of Friends is them. Society of Friends, also called Friends Church, by name Quakers, Christian group that arose in the mid-17th century England, dedicated to living in accordance with the inward light, or directed inward apprehension of God without creeds, clergy, or other ecclesiastical forms. See, the religion was removed. The Quakers didn't believe in religion. They believed in the one true God and the light that is in every human being, every man born. This is Wikipedia, the Quakers, what we just showed you. Now I'm going to show you how Wikipedia likes to hide things. Okay, so we're still over here on Wikipedia. And what they have it under now is Britain Yearly Meeting. And what is the yearly meeting? The yearly meeting of the Religious Society of Friends, Quakers, in Britain. So when you take their Wikipedia site and you look over on this side, what do you discover? Q. So, are we on the right path? Let's get the concept, guys. So, you watch the videos. You watch the whole series. This is going to be the last one in the series. If you were one of the wise people and got the facts, which was the whole point, we were trying to go through a series of videos to show you that you are watching a scripted movie. What are the facts? The facts were presented up until that point. If you were one of the few that received the facts, then you know for a fact that there is an organic constitution for the republic, and it is the Constitution for the United States of America. That is the republic. There is a counterfeit corporation, a federal contract of the crown that has a constitution of the United States of America. And notice the pronunciation. I mean the syntax here. Look at the capital letters and where they're at, so that you know you're dealing with two separate entities. Grammar is very, very important. Syntax is very, very important. Look, when you write a letter and all that kind of stuff, and you want to own it, where do you put your name? You sign at the bottom right corner, right? So when you go into court and your name is at the top of the document, that means everything that follows in continuance in grammar has nothing to do with you. Your signature, your name is above all that. So anything under that is somebody or something else. Okay, grammar is, all these things are important, very important. So you know you have through that document and through that report. Okay, it's not a genuine quote unquote document. It is a report that he did to notify. And just understand, guys, like I said, I think he's off track. I don't think he's the Postmaster General, but perhaps he is, or the Postmaster General Judge. Perhaps he is. Here's one thing. He has filed everywhere. Okay, I can tell you that. He's filed everywhere, and nobody has rebutted him. Nobody. Ever. And silence is acquiescence in law, period. That's a maximum of law. If you remain silent, you agree. So, no, none of these people ever rebutted him. None of them. The UN, the Pentagon, nobody. So you have an organic constitution for the United States of America. And you have a corporation that is acting like a government, imitating the role of government, having a CEO, a vice president, and a board of directors. That's what it's called, board of directors. So you had a vice president, CEO, board of directors, and they're acting like they're the vice president, the president, vice president, and the Congress and all this other stuff. Then they branched out and created these other entities like the CIA and FBI and all these other branches out there, acting like those things are acting like they belong to the United States government, and really they're doing their own thing. The CIA was ran basically by George H.W. Herbert Walker Bush, and they ran drugs and did money laundering with drugs in order to finance it, so that Congress and the other people didn't know what they were truly doing. They were completely outside of the scope of the other corporation. They don't have nothing to do with it. They are actors. It's a complete and utter fraud. Now, after that fiction, that corporation then went through 3 separate bankruptcies, and that third and final bankruptcy came and finished up November 2nd, 1999. Then a year later, when the president was elected, and then that January of 2001 when he was put in office, from that point on, you were dealing with a complete and absolute fraud. The power should have come back to the people. They had to vacate office, period, by law. So they had no way out of this. So from that point on, each person that they put into position as chief financial officer, it was a new fraud each time being committed, because the offices were vacant. The whole thing was completely and utterly shut down, done. But they had control of the narrative. They had control of the machinery. They had control of the news. They had control of Twitter, Facebook, you name it. They had control of Google and so forth and so on, as everybody is now beginning to learn, as it's beginning to come to light, and all these things. And they knew for a fact that Hillary was going to be put in office. They knew this as a fact. Why? Because the elections have always been rigged. They put the person into position. Okay? But this time, they knew for a fact Hillary was going to win. But she did not win. We the people, we the people won. Donald John Trump. Now, you tell me how Donald John Trump won the election in a rigged system. Because he was inserted to bring the whole thing down. He seized control of the corporate ship called the United States of America, the corporation. And he became commander-in-chief of the ship. He now controls the machinery. He tweets. He brings the information directly. A few months later, 6-7 months go by, boom, Q shows up. The military intelligence psychological operation comes in. And this whole thing has been nothing but a show. They have been done since November 2nd, 1999, when the bankruptcy itself came to an end. And that's what you should have learned throughout all of this. That was the whole point, was to show you that you're watching a movie. So sit back, get your popcorn out, and enjoy the show like Q has told you over and over again. Get in the Word, stay in the Word, and get the Word in you. It's important. Remember, other than the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the only 2 things that are important are love and truth. After that, peace and justice.